You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics. I'm your host, Dimitri Vitsa. I'm the founder and CEO of Rock, Paper, Scissors. We are a PR firm that specializes in music, tech, and music tech. And here on Music Tectonics, we go beneath the surface to look at all the changes going on in music and technology. And today, I've got with me Dan Mackta, the managing director of Qobuz USA. How's it going, Dan?
Good. How are you, Dimitri?
I'm doing good. I just want to jump right in and let people know what Qobuz is. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Qobuz is?
Sure. Qobuz is a music streaming and download service. It's a French company that actually started over 10 years ago as a high-res download store, but evolved and grew. And in 2014, Qobuz was the first company to offer a high-res 24-bit music streaming service, the very first to do that in Europe. And we opened the service in the US actually just this year in mid-February. So, as I mentioned, it's high-res and lossless. So it's all uncompressed, at least CD quality, if not better, in a streaming service that's available on any device, but also a download store doing high-res downloads, which are still quite popular in the audiophile world in contrast to the trends in the mainstream market. Downloading is still a big thing.
It's interesting because it's almost like the audiophile world is its own like parallel universe, but maybe as Qobuz and other interest in high resolution audio is kind of becoming more popular, that it crosses over more. But can you tell us a little bit about that audiophile world? And because if most people don't really even dip into it.
Right. Well, it's kind of there's a really diehard subculture. It's a hobby. It's a costly hobby. People get into in search of the ultimate audio quality, and whereas the average person is probably just walking around having spent zero on their audio because they're using their phone and the earbuds that came with it. The folks who are really into sound quality and consider themselves audiophiles could spend tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on super high-end preamps and amps and speakers, and it's definitely can get extreme. But the interesting development is that the technology and the engineering quality and know-how that's required to make equipment sound good has become much more accessible. And with the availability now of high-res streaming and lossless CD quality streaming, the equipment's also available to just about anybody without spending hundreds of thousands or even thousands of dollars. I mean, you definitely may want to have better than stock earbuds and so forth, but the sound quality and the streaming and the bandwidth and the equipment, everything is kind of coming together finally to make this vision of incredible audio quality with the convenience of a streaming service and the portability and so forth is actually here. It's here now. I mean, it's arrived. There's no question about it.
So for those who haven't really experienced anything other than streaming on their phone, how do you explain the sound quality difference? They may not even realize that compressed streaming is a problem.
Right. Well, and for some, it may never be a problem because that's what they're used to, and they prefer that sound. But of course, as many people know, and as artists definitely know, when they're recording their music in the studio, it is uncompressed, full bandwidth, usually done in 24-bit digital. So that's even better than the CD quality, which is 16-bit. So they're recording with all of this headroom and all of this bandwidth for all of the details and the dynamics and everything that go into a music performance and making a record. But then much like the pure Colombian cocaine that gets adulterated and we say stepped on throughout the chain. The same thing happens with audio, and it's compressed and converted into any number of what we call lossy formats that are the technology that most of the mainstream streaming services use, and it may not really be that noticeable through super cheap earbuds.
Hmm.
But as soon as you start listening through half decent equipment, you start to realize that these lossy formats do potentially detract from your enjoyment of the music. And there's little things that people who are not audio experts can tell, like the way a cymbal may sound more like a weird electronic instead of the beautiful and almost endless decay that a real cymbal actually has in the wild. And those are the kind of details, and those are the kind of elements that lossless and high-res audio can reveal. So it's especially noticeable and especially prized when you're talking about fans of genres like jazz and classical, where there's a lot of dynamics and a lot of musical information coming through. To be honest, a lot of modern pop recordings don't have any dynamics. They're recorded with this, what they call brick wall compression, where it's the same volume all the way through, and it's loud so that it pops on the radio. So there's certain music that is not as dynamic to begin with, but if you've got great recordings and great mastering, then high res definitely reveals it and is much more immersive and engaging than the alternative.
So let me ask you a question. Are people either born interested in kind of higher res audio, or are they converted? And if they're converted, what are the things that convert them?
Well, I think that we've definitely got two cohorts, if we're going to answer that question. I mean, there's this older crowd who are our core customers right now. These are people who grew up in the vinyl era, who grew up, listening to reel tapes and got into hi-fi when it was still really more of a mainstream pursuit. And these are folks who were probably analog all the way and tried digital when it first came out and said, this is not for me. I'm going to stick with what I'm familiar with. And it's not till now that the availability of high res and lossless streaming draws them into the digital world. And then there's people, digital natives who, are musicians or, work in the creative fields and actually know something about sound quality and maybe know that they're recording in 24-bit, but when they're streaming on one of the mainstream services, it's, 1/28th of the resolution. So, I think that it's both. I mean, we start with a hardcore following of people that are really already into sound quality, and then beyond that, there's an education process. I mean, most people don't even know. Let's be honest; they don't even know that what they're listening to is, as I said, stepped on, and that's it's human nature. I think that if we do let people know that there is something better, that some portion of those people will gravitate towards it. It's human nature to want something better if it's available. So that's kind of the mission now, is educating, really diehard music fans. That's the next group outside the core audiophiles, but diehard music fans that are just really into it and into listening to music as a primary experience. Like, I'm going to put on music and sit down in front of the stereo and listen to it, as opposed to I'm just putting on music as background for making dinner or whatever, the musical wallpaper kind of model. So, for those that are really into music, we've got a potential audience for these higher quality formats. And, that's the mission of Qobuz and services like us right now, is to educate the public that there's something better out there.
Dan, I saw you a few months back at a music tech meetup in New York, and you had the right speakers in Qobuz and did a demo, and I definitely had that reaction, sort of like, oh, I've totally been missing out this whole time. So definitely experiencing it made a big difference. I mean, I've heard people talk about it, and I've even heard people talk about it, and I still wasn't ready to adjust my listening habits. But now I'm like, oh, as soon as I can get some of those speakers, I'm
Yeah.
ready.
Well, again, it's the the equipment does play a role, and if you've got half decent equipment and you're listening to music that has a lot of dynamic range and well recorded and mastered music, then it's a pretty can be a startling experience, and it is an upgrade. And I find it interesting that with all the technology, if we look at video and television or whatever they call it now, you had HD and 1080p and 4K and 8K, and it just keeps the quality keeps getting better and better. Meanwhile, I was watching on an old cathode ray TV. I had no idea it wasn't sharp enough. It seemed fine all those years, but now if you go back and look at that, it seems blurry. And the technology has brought ever more, detail and quality in video and in music. On the other hand, as technology gets better and better, the opposite happened, and the music quality got worse and worse, less and less resolution, and more compression. So, what seems to be happening now is it really can't get any worse. It's starting to bounce back as we see, major players get into lossless and high-res streaming, and the idea of it is not so crazy anymore. That there is some better audio quality to be had, and it's not that difficult to attain. So I feel like we've kind of come back around.
Speaking of that, if I was going to go all in on high resolution streaming, what should I be looking at in terms of headphone or speakers? And maybe you could give examples of a low price, mid, super deluxe, whether it's features or particular products that you would recommend for people to start with.
Sure. I mean, the most basic thing that I recommend that anybody get if they want to do high resolution music is a little portable DAC, which is a digital to analog converter, called an AudioQuest Dragonfly. AudioQuest is the company that makes them. Dragonfly is the name of the product, and it looks like a little USB thumb drive, and you can plug your phone right into it, basically, and then it's got an 1/8 inch audio out on the back, and this thing will take Kobus streaming through your phone and deliver a source that's equivalent to just unthinkable a few years ago, that out of a phone you could get this bit perfect high res streaming. And with that, Dragonfly, they have a few different levels. They range from $100 to $200 or $300. You can basically take that and really any powered speakers. I've got a pair of SVS powered speakers on my desk. Plugging my phone into them with the Dragonfly, gives a really incredible sort of desktop listening experience, and it's really nothing fancy or nothing expensive.
So that's on the low price
Yeah,
end?
yeah. The AudioQuest Dragonfly and a pair of SVS powered speakers gives you, an incredible amount of flexibility and quality. Or with the Dragonfly, you can plug your headphones right in. I've been using a pair of Grado GS3000, which are really like a top end Grado headphone, but they got a whole line, starting at $100. You could get a really, really nice pair of quality headphones and be listening to high res through that Dragonfly. But then, you go up to something like whole home audio. If you want to do, the thing about Sonos, as it works very well, but it maxes out at CD quality, 16-bit lossless. But there's a company called Blue Sound that does a whole home streaming line similar to the way Sonos works. They have speakers, they have just amps, they have standalone streaming devices. So Blue Sound does high res. That's the difference, is you can stream 24-bit through the system. So something like it's called the Blue Sound Node 2i It's what we call a streamer. So it's an audio component that really does nothing else except pull in streaming services and allow you to control them through one app and output that into your home system. And those cost about $500, and that's a great, kind of entry to mid-level place to be with high-res audio in the home.
So that's like instead of Sonos, pretty much.
And it's kind of mid-level. You're making a commitment to it, but it's not breaking the bank. But then you can get into some really high-end streaming products and streaming servers. They're called. There's a company called Orender. There's one called Inuos out of France, and you can easily spend $5,000 to $10,000 just on the box that streams the music, and that then goes into an amp or what have you. And there's a lot of elements of technology when you're talking about digital audio that people are tweaking endlessly in terms of the time domain and the clocking and all of these elements that go into digital audio chain that I really don't even understand. So because I don't understand them, it doesn't bother me. But if you're listening for it, people do feel that with these super high end components, they're getting even better sound. And like I said, that's where we get into this kind of hobby fanatic area of audiophiledom, where they're really spending money that the average person would think was kind of silly. But it's like wines, right? If you're not into wine, you're like, if you spend more than $12, you wasted your money. But there's people who spend obviously hundreds and thousands of dollars on wine.
$14
yeah, exactly. So that's it. You get into this really high end stuff, but for the most part, I'm telling people, just grab a USB DAC capable of 24-bit audio, and you can use your computer, you can use your phone, experience it without breaking the bank. There's other great headphones. Bowers and Wilkins does great headphones that are kind of mid-priced. If you want to get fancier, there's a French brand called Focal, Focal, that makes great headphones. But like in all of these things, it's kind of a matter of personal preference. And I recommend that people go check out, every major city has got like hi-fi audio shows, annual basis, or major cities at least have them, and that's a place where you can go and kind of go room to room, table to table, listen to a lot of systems and listen to different headphones and different combinations, and that can be really eye-opening, and it's a great way, if you don't know the gear, to go sample a lot of it. Or you stop in at your local hi-fi store, which may seem like a weird place that only it's a relic from the 1970s, but most of the stores that are still in business today have wholly embraced digital and have all kinds of gear and demos that you can go in and hear and test the technology.
So we've talked a bit about this differentiator of high res. I'm curious, are there other features that Qobuz has that maybe Spotify or Apple don't have?
The premium audio quality is the centerpiece, and that's why the users come in the door, is that they're looking for better audio quality. But since it's our focus, the idea in terms of other features is layering stuff in and including stuff that's going to enhance the experience for these people that are really into music. So there's certain things that we do as well or better than anybody else, like the metadata and all the credits. Basically everything that we get from the record companies is displayed in the service. So some suppliers are better than others about metadata, but on certain releases there could be hundreds of credits of musicians and engineers and producers and mixers, and we've got it all. In addition, we have digital booklets right in the service. So that's basically the CD booklet, and iTunes Download Store has them, but in terms of a streaming service, nobody else offers the digital booklets. And again, especially in classical and jazz, those liner notes and the librettos and so forth is a key component of enjoying the recordings for those music fans.
What's the experience like of those digital booklets in Qobuz? I mean, is this something that the labels create and distribute?
Yeah. It's basically very similar to the digital booklet that iTunes would have offered you. It's a PDF of the actual booklet.
Gotcha.
So it's nothing really fancy, but at least it's there and accessible. And we're always talking to different companies and entrepreneurs and startups that have different ideas for interactive digital booklets and more interactive credits, and all of that stuff's really important to us. There is a lot of original content that we do. We've got kind of name music writers who do long form articles about different artists or genres or labels. And that's all right, again, right in the app. We have, we've got a lot of curated playlists that are done, by artists and producers and hi-fi manufacturers, and really, focusing on the stuff that people who are into sound would really care about. And the one other thing that, I think really makes us stand out is we're music people. We're just, what we do is music. I think of us more as a music company than a tech company. We're not trying to be all things to all people. We're trying to be, the cool boutique music source, that really cares about what we're doing and cares about the music, as opposed to, just being, the all things to all people app. We're not getting into sports podcasting. We're not developing original TV programming. We're just a music service. But, the idea being that there's some people out there that's really what they want. They want a great, great music service.
Gotcha. And so alongside those playlists, there's some of that music love comes through with some editorial coverage and features as well.
Exactly. We have, people that are really into what they're doing, creating these lists, and they're more, from a music fan perspective, as opposed to something created by a computer to, enhance your brain functioning, while working. That's something that somebody does well, but we are really veering the exact opposite direction. Say, maybe you want to deep dive into the music of Alice Coltrane. It's a different way of looking at it and pulling it together.
So Dan, what's your background? How'd you get into this?
Well, how long is the podcast again? Yeah. I am a music guy, and I come from the, label side of the business, for lack of a better word. I started, my first job was at the British label 4AD, much beloved independent, and I started in radio promotion, and that was 20, I don't know, a long time ago, 28 years ago. So since then, I worked at different independent labels. I spent a number of years in the Sony system, working at Jive Records, then RCA as a VP of marketing, and really learning every aspect of the record side of the business, really, which went through, gargantuan tectonic changes, if I may use the word. During the years I was working at the major labels, but I got to work with great artists like Buddy Guy and Cage the Elephant and Tool and Weird Al. That was a good one. Weird Al Yankovic, one of the greats. So, working directly with artists and their teams and putting together album campaigns through the, when I started, I think iTunes wasn't even a thing yet. And when I left the labels, obviously we were a lot closer to where we are today, where streaming is kind of bringing the business back in terms of revenues. So I kind of come full circle, but I always secretly wanted to, run a record store. And that's kind of, what I'm doing now, although it's kind of a three-dimensional, very complicated version of a record store. But, after years of being, kind of working project by project and artist by artist, now I'm really having a good time, working with everybody and trying to create a service that, caters to people like me that just really, really into music, love music, new, old, all different genres, whatever it is. And, So all that experience is, I draw on it every day now, but it's definitely a lot of fun to be kind of on the other side after all the years working for labels.
Well, it's cool to see from that label and artist and music perspective that you're able to find a streaming service that fits the bill in terms of being really music oriented as well.
Yeah, yeah, and somewhat unique in that way, but it's a great fit for me. And all the artists and managers and folks in the business that I've worked with and met over the years are all of a sudden, people I can partner with to put together, content and promotional ideas and so forth for the service. So it's been real good.
So, we talk about big seismic shifts on music tectonics. So, before we wrap up, I want to give you a little bit of a different kind of question. I'm curious if you think it's better for the music industry to have a streaming leader like Spotify, which struggles to make a profit but's independent of hardware or advertising, or like Apple, which is sending messages that it will pay a premium to rights holders, but maybe uses music as a loss leader. Curious if you personally have a that's kind of a conversation that seems to start to be coming up more and more in the music space.
Right. Well, I think the answer is it remains to be seen. The race to the bottom on pricing as far as digital music is concerned is not good, except for a consumer who just wants to get what they want as cheap as they possibly can, which is definitely most people. But from the overall health of the business standpoint and ability of artists to make a living, not great. Um, so the idea of these bigger companies using music as a loss leader, I mean, it's a symptom of capitalism. But just like when Best Buy was selling CDs so cheap because they just wanted to get people in the door to sell them washing machines, we were all up in arms and we all angry at Best Buy. Now Best Buy doesn't carry CDs, and we wish we could have had it the old way. So it's definitely a it's a crazy business, and it doesn't get any easier for truly creative people to make a living or get compensated for what they do. I'm not sure what the alternatives are, but I definitely think that it's good that there's healthy competition and different kinds of companies and different models, and I think that's only going to increase in the future with different types of streaming services and models for different kinds of consumers.
Yeah, it's interesting that in that context, your Qobuz is not necessarily going the lowest price point necessarily, and more looking at adding more value for the super fan of music.
Correct. I mean, just looking at it from a rights holder's perspective, I mean, the idea that music can only exist at $10 a month has been proven false now by us and others. Whether there's a mainstream mass market music offer that exists above $10 a month, I don't know, but that doesn't mean that those who do want better quality and more context and more liner notes and a more focused music experience that are willing to pay more they should be allowed to have that kind of service too, right? I mean, just because Toyotas are the car that most people drive doesn't mean that nobody should be able to have a Porsche if they want it. So that's where I see it going.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome. So, and you're going to be out at the Music Tectonics conference in full force. Excited to have you October 28th, 29th in Los Angeles. I know you were interested in coming out and partially preaching to the industry to try out high-res audio as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that the stage has now been set. People know what it is. People are more aware of it than ever after some of the news of the last couple of weeks. But the idea is education, and there's still a lot of people who don't even know that there's something better. People in the industry, people who work at labels, have maybe heard of high res or heard of 24-bit or seen it on a release schedule, but don't even really know what it means or why it exists. So we take every opportunity we can to meet directly with, folks in the various parts of the industry, because if everyone gets on board with it and understands what it is, then it's only going to enhance the listening experience for those among us who do care about sound quality. So we got to bring some of the stragglers along a bit, but I'm really looking forward to it. And you did promise me the weather's going to be fantastic, so
The weather will be fantastic.
I'll hold you to that.
Awesome. Will people get a chance to listen to Qobuz at Music Tectonics?
Yes, we will bring some gear to demo it for anyone who wants to hear it. A few different setups to try it a few different ways. And like I said, you'll see me walking around with my phone. I'll plug your earbuds or your headphones right into my Dragonfly, and you'll be blown away. So it's definitely going to be in full effect, as they say at the conference.
Awesome. Great. Well, Dan, thanks for joining me on the podcast. It's been great getting a deep dive into Qobuz.
Oh, thanks for having me. And, like I said, we are music lovers. We're looking for music lovers who want to experience a service that's more for them. And that's our, I think our slogan is something like, "We are the music lovers." It may have sounded better in French, but that's what we're all about. So if you're a music lover, I encourage you to check it out.
I think we just got the title for the podcast here. Thanks again, Dan. I'll see you in LA.
Sounds great. Thanks, Dimitri.
And thank you for listening to Music Tectonics. Before you leave your podcast app, make sure to subscribe so that you can get updated on other stuff that's happening at Music Tectonics and other great conversations and interviews. If you go to musictectonics.com and sign up for our newsletter, you can get a $50 discount for Music Tectonics, the conference, which again is taking place October 28th and 29th in Los Angeles. We hope to see you there. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.